The UNSS Florence Nightingale gleamed against the backdrop of stars like a pristine white whale swimming through the cosmic ocean. She was the pride of Earth's humanitarian fleet, all 2,000 meters of her, packed with medical facilities that would make planetside hospitals weep with envy. Captain Morgan Reeves stood on the observation deck, nursing what had to be his 15th cup of coffee that shift. The bags under his eyes had bags of their own, and his once crisp uniform now had the lived-in look of clothing that had forgotten what an iron was. "Captain," called out Communications Officer Tina Maxwell, her voice somehow maintaining its cheerful lilt despite the perpetual chaos of a hospital ship. "We're receiving a hail from an unidentified vessel. They're not in our database." Reeves sighed deeply, the sound of a man who had long ago accepted that the universe existed primarily to prevent him from taking a nap. "First contact situation. Today of all days? Put them on screen, Maxwell. And somebody get me more coffee." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a humanoid figure with purplish skin, an elongated cranium, and what appeared to be gills fluttering gently on their neck. The alien wore an elaborate uniform festooned with medals that looked suspiciously like bottle caps. "Greetings, Earth vessel," the alien said in surprisingly perfect English. "I am Ambassador Zlork of the Zargonian Empire. We have been monitoring your communications and have determined that your species might be worthy of our magnificent presence." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "Charmed, I'm sure. This is Captain Morgan Reeves of the UNSS Florence Nightingale, a medical vessel. We're on a humanitarian mission to provide aid to the colonies in the Proxima Centauri system." Ambassador Zlork's gills fluttered in what Reeves hoped was a sign of approval and not an allergic reaction. "Medical vessel? How quaint. The Zargonian Empire would be most interested in observing your primitive healing practices. Perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange." Reeves glanced at his executive officer, Commander Diana Wu, who shrugged as if to say, "Why not? What's the worst that could happen?" If only they knew. 3 days later, Captain Reeves was beginning to think that hosting a delegation of Zargonians might not have been the best idea he'd ever had. They touched everything, asked endless questions, and one of them had even tried to drink the disinfectant because it smelled delicious. In the main surgical bay, Dr. Patel Patches Rodriguez was demonstrating Earth's medical technology to a group of fascinated Zargonians. Rodriguez had earned his nickname not only for his skill at patching up patients, but also for the collection of actual patches on his lab coat, souvenirs from medical facilities across the galaxy. And this, Rodriguez explained, waving a handheld device that emitted a soft blue glow, is what we call a cellular regenerator. It stimulates the body's natural healing processes at an accelerated rate. Ambassador Zlork leaned in uncomfortably close, his breath smelling faintly of something akin to fermented licorice. "Fascinating. And it works on all species?" "Well, we've calibrated it for most known sentient life forms," Rodriguez replied, taking a step back. "Though I have to say, I've never worked on a Zargonian before. Your physiology is quite unique." "Oh yes," Zlork said, his voice dropping to what might have been an attempt at a conspiratorial whisper, but came out more like a garbage disposal with a spoon stuck in it. "We are exceptional." Just then, the ship's alarms began to wail. Rodriguez's communication device buzzed urgently. "Dr. Rodriguez to the bridge, emergency situation." Captain Reeves' voice crackled through the speaker. Before Rodriguez could respond, Ambassador Zlork's demeanor changed entirely. The almost comical diplomat vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I'm afraid your services will now be required for my soldiers, Doctor." "Your what now?" Rodriguez barely had time to ask before the ship shuddered violently, throwing him against a medical cabinet. The lights flickered, and the emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in an ominous red glow. Through the viewport, Rodriguez could see what appeared to be a massive Zargonian warship decloaking beside the Florence Nightingale. Purple beams of energy sliced through the medical ship's minimal defensive shields like they were made of tissue paper. "You're attacking a hospital ship?" Rodriguez asked incredulously, steadying himself against a surgical table. "What kind of space-faring psychopaths are you?" Zlork smiled, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "The efficient kind, Doctor." Your vessel's medical technology is far superior to anything we possess. Rather than developing it ourselves, we find it more economical to simply take it. On the bridge, Captain Reeves was furiously trying to coordinate an evacuation of the patients. Woo! Get the critical cases to the escape pods. Maxwell, send out a distress call on all frequencies. Already done, Captain Maxwell replied, her earlier cheerfulness replaced by grim determination. But I don't know if anyone's close enough to help. Another blast rocked the ship, and Reeves was thrown from his chair. The viewscreen showed multiple Zargonian boarding crafts attaching themselves to the hull like metallic parasites. Back in the surgical bay, Rodriguez and his medical team were frantically moving patients away from the outer walls where the Zargonians were cutting through. Everyone who can walk, help those who can't, Rodriguez shouted above the chaos. Head for the central core. Security teams will meet us there. A nurse named Jenkins looked up from the trauma patient she was stabilizing. What about this one, doctor? He won't survive being moved. Rodriguez glanced at the patient, a colonial miner with extensive internal injuries, then at the sparking wall panel where Zargonian cutting tools were already visible. He made a split-second decision. I'm staying with him. The rest of you go. That's an order. As his medical team reluctantly evacuated with the mobile patients, Rodriguez positioned himself between the immobile patient and the section of wall that was now glowing red-hot. He grabbed a surgical laser, knowing full well it would be useless against military armor, but unable to abandon his Hippocratic oath. The wall panel finally gave way with a screech of tearing metal, and heavily armed Zargonian soldiers poured into the surgical bay. "Touch my patient," Rodriguez said with a calm that surprised even himself, "and I'll show you exactly how good I am at taking things apart instead of putting them back together." Admiral Victoria Iron Lady Blackwood was enjoying a rare moment of peace in her office aboard the UNSS Inevitable, Earth's flagship, when her aide burst through the door without knocking a capital offense in the normal course of events. "This had better be good, Lieutenant, or you'll be scrubbing plasma conduits with your toothbrush until retirement," Blackwood said without looking up from her paperwork. "Anne, the Florence Nightingale is under attack." Blackwood's head snapped up, her steel-grey eyes narrowing. Who would be stupid enough to attack a clearly marked hospital ship? Someone called the Zargonian Empire. "Man, we just received their distress call. The Florence Nightingale has sustained heavy damage and reports multiple boarding parties." Blackwood was already on her feet, striding toward the door. "Sound general quarters. I want the fleet command staff in the war room 5 minutes ago." 20 minutes later, the atmosphere in the war room could have frozen nitrogen. Holographic displays showed the Florence Nightingale's last known position, and the faces of Earth's military leadership ranged from shock to barely contained fury. "Let me get this straight," General Martinez of the Space Marines said, his voice dangerously quiet. "These Zargonians pretended to be interested in a cultural exchange, then attacked and boarded a hospital ship. A ship that was treating sick and injured civilians." "That's the situation, General," Blackwood confirmed. "The Nightingale managed to launch most of its escape pods before communications were cut off, but we estimate at least 200 personnel and patients are still on board." Lieutenant Commander Jake Joker Donnelly, Blackwood's unorthodox tactical officer, leaned forward. Despite his nickname, there was nothing humorous in his expression now. "Permission to speak freely. Admiral?" "Always, Joker. We need to go in hard and fast. The Zargonians have shown they don't respect the rules of engagement. They don't deserve the courtesy of a warning shot." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. "I agree," Blackwood said. "But we need more intelligence. We know nothing about their capabilities or numbers." "Actually, Donnelly said with a grim smile, "we do have some intel. The Florence Nightingale's chief engineer managed to get a data burst through before they lost communications. Schematics of the Zargonian vessel, shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, the works. Engineer Kowalski apparently hacked their systems while they thought they were just observing our medical technology." For the first time, a thin smile crossed Blackwood's face. "Remind me to give Kowalski a medal if we get them back." Now, options? Standard response would be to dispatch a diplomatic vessel to demand explanation and reparations, offered Admiral Chen of the Diplomatic Corps. With all due respect, Admiral, Donnelly interjected. They attacked a hospital ship. I think we're past the strongly worded letter stage of diplomacy. General Martinez nodded emphatically. I say we deploy the entire Fifth Fleet. Show these Zargonians what happens when you violate the most basic principles of civilized space travel. The Fifth Fleet is overkill, Admiral Chen argued. We don't want to start an interstellar war. They already started it, Donnelly said flatly. We're just going to finish it. Blackwood studied the tactical display for a long moment, then straightened to her full height. Deploy the 5th and 7th Fleets. Full combat readiness. And get me the Artemis Special Operations Team. If there are still people alive on that hospital ship, I want them back. Admiral Chen protested. The 7th Fleet is our heavy assault division. This is exactly what's called for. Blackwood cut him off. They attacked a hospital ship. Admiral Chen, there are lines you don't cross in civilized space, and they just pole vaulted over this one. She turned to Donnelly. Joker, you'll coordinate the tactical approach. I want options that minimize risk to any hostages but make it abundantly clear to these Zargonians that they've made the worst mistake of their collective existence. Donnelly's grin was wolfish. With pleasure, Admiral. I've got a few ideas they definitely won't see coming. I bet you do, Blackwood said. Everyone, to your stations. We launch in 30 minutes. As the command staff filed out, Martinez lingered. You realize, Victoria, that this response is going to send a message to more than just the Zargonians. The entire galactic community will be watching. Blackwood nodded solemnly. Good. Let them all see what happens when someone attacks healers under Earth's protection. This isn't just about the Florence Nightingale, it's about making sure no one ever makes this mistake again. Emperor Krell of the Zargonian Empire was having a splendid day. Reports indicated that the acquisition of the Earth vessel was proceeding smoothly, with only minimal resistance from the medical staff. The humans' technology was even more advanced than their intelligence suggested, particularly in the field of cellular regeneration technology that would give the Empire a significant edge in prolonged conflicts. Your Magnificence, announced his Chief of Staff, Commander Vrex reports that they have secured the main medical bay and are beginning to transfer equipment to our vessel. Excellent, Krell replied, his 7-fingered hand idly stroking the ceremonial dagger at his belt. And the human medical personnel? Being put to work treating our wounded, as you commanded. Krell nodded in satisfaction. This was why the Zargonian Empire had prospered for centuries. Why waste resources developing your own technology when you could simply take it from less militarily capable species? The humans had crafted a marvel of a medical ship, but equipped it with only the most basic defensive capabilities. It was practically an invitation. His self-congratulatory musings were interrupted by a frantic subordinate bursting onto the command deck. Your Magnificence. Our sensors have detected multiple vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Krell waved dismissively. Probably a small rescue party. Dispatch a frigate to deal with them. Sir, the subordinate's voice trembled. Our sensors are detecting over 50 warships. For the first time, a flicker of concern crossed Krell's features. 50? That's unexpected. Show me. The view screen activated to reveal a formation of Earth vessels that made Krell's gills flutter in alarm. These were not the sleek, white medical ships he had expected. These were monstrosities of war, angular, bristling with weapons, their hulls scarred from previous battles. In command of Rex, Krell opened a channel to the boarding party, keeping his voice steady despite his growing unease. It seems the humans have deployed a response fleet. Accelerate the technology transfer and prepare to depart. On board the captured Florence Nightingale, Commander Vrex frowned at the Emperor's message. A response fleet? Already? Their intelligence had indicated that the nearest Earth military vessels were days away, even at maximum speed. Vrex moved to a viewport and felt his blood run cold. The Earth vessels were deploying in a formation he had never seen before, not a standard attack pattern or defensive screen, but something else entirely. It almost looked like. "By the 7 moons," he whispered. "They're forming a spear point." Before he could report this observation to the Emperor, the Florence Nightingale shuddered violently. "What was that?" Rex demanded. His second-in-command checked the sensors. "Unknown, Commander. Our systems detect no weapons fire." And on the bridge of the UNSS Inevitable, Admiral Blackwood watched as Donnelly's unconventional tactical approach unfolded. Instead of a direct assault on the Zargonian vessels, the Earth fleet had deployed specialized ships equipped with gravity manipulation technology originally designed for asteroid mining to create localized distortions around the Florence Nightingale. Phase 1 complete. "Admiral," Donnelly reported with satisfaction. "The gravity nets are in place. They can't go anywhere without tearing their own ships apart." "Excellent," Blackwood nodded. "Begin Phase 2. Aboard the Zargonian command ship, alarms were blaring as systems began shutting down one by one. "What's happening?" Krell demanded, watching in horror as his ship's lights dimmed. "Some kind of cyber attack." His technology officer replied frantically, "It's like nothing I've ever seen. They're using our own systems against us." On dozens of Earth vessels, teams of hackers, many hastily recalled from retirement, were employing skills honed during Earth's digital wars. The Zargonians' mistake had been connecting to the Florence Nightingale's systems. Once linked, they had unwittingly created a backdoor that Earth's cyber warriors were exploiting with ruthless efficiency. Commander Vrex watched in disbelief as his soldiers' powered armor suddenly locked in place, trapping them in rigid poses like some bizarre art installation. The commander, one of his few unaffected officers, called out, "The humans we captured, they're gone." At that exact moment, throughout the Florence Nightingale, panels in the walls and ceilings slid open, each revealing hidden compartments from which emerged black-clad figures moving with lethal precision. The Artemis Special Operations Team, having infiltrated through maintenance tunnels unknown to the Zargonians, were systematically reclaiming the ship. In the main medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez looked up from treating his patient to see 3 Zargonian guards suddenly collapse, tranquilizer darts protruding from the gaps in their armor. A female operative materialized beside him, as if from thin air. "Dr. Rodriguez?" "Captain Rex, Artemis team, ready for extraction, sir." Rodriguez blinked in surprise. "My patient." "Already prepping a stabilization pod for transport," Captain Rex assured him. "Admiral Blackwood sends her compliments and apologizes for the delay." On the command deck of his increasingly dysfunctional flagship, Emperor Krell was facing the unthinkable: defeat. His boarding parties were being neutralized, his ships were dead in space, and the Earth fleet hadn't even fired a shot yet. "Your Magnificence," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the Earth vessel." The view screen activated to show Admiral Blackwood, her expression making it clear that Krell was looking at the human embodiment of controlled fury. "Emperor Krell, I presume?" Blackwood's voice was arctic. "I am Admiral Victoria Blackwood of the United Earth Defense Force. You have exactly one opportunity to surrender before I demonstrate exactly why attacking a hospital ship was the worst decision of your reign." The conference room aboard the UNSS Inevitable had been hastily converted for diplomatic purposes, which in this case meant adding a table large enough for both delegations and removing anything that could be used as a weapon. Admiral Blackwood sat at one end, flanked by her senior staff and a stone-faced Dr. Rodriguez, who had insisted on being present. Emperor Krell and his surviving officers occupied the other end, their posture considerably less imperial than it had been a day earlier. "Let me be perfectly clear," Blackwood began without preamble. "The only reason we're having this conversation instead of reducing your ships to their component atoms is because we've managed to rescue all our personnel. And Earth generally prefers diplomacy to extinction-level events." Krell's gills fluttered in what might have been indignation or fear. Blackwood couldn't tell and didn't particularly care. "Admiral," Krell responded, his translator struggling to convey the right tone, "there appears to have been a most unfortunate misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Blackwood repeated flatly. You attacked a clearly marked hospital ship after pretending to engage in peaceful cultural exchange. Please, enlighten me as to what part I'm misunderstanding. Donnelly, seated to Blackwood's right, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. This should be good. Krell exchanged glances with Commander Vex, who had survived the recapture of the Florence Nightingale and now sported an impressive bandage where Dr. Rodriguez had accidentally used too much disinfectant on a minor cut. In Zargonian culture, Krell began cautiously, the strong take what they need from the weak. It is expected. A test, if you will. Those who cannot defend their possessions do not deserve to keep them. There was a moment of stunned silence before Dr. Rodriguez burst out laughing. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Let me get this straight, Rodriguez said, wiping an imaginary tear from his eye. You thought that because we dedicated resources to healing instead of warfare, we were weak, and that somehow justified piracy? It is not piracy in our culture, Commander Vex interjected. It is simply the natural order. Blackwood leaned back in her chair, studying the Zargonians with new understanding. And now that we've demonstrated our capability to disable your entire fleet without firing a single conventional weapon, how does your cultural framework interpret that? Krell and Vex exchanged another look, this one distinctly uncomfortable. It suggests a reassessment of our initial evaluation, Krell admitted reluctantly. I bet it does, Donnelly muttered. Blackwood tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. Here's what's going to happen. You will provide full reparations for the damage to the Florence Nightingale. You will return every piece of equipment you removed. You will issue a formal apology to Earth's Interstellar Council. And you will sign a treaty acknowledging that all vessels displaying medical insignia are off limits to your cultural practices. And if we refuse? Krell asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Blackwood smiled thinly. Then I turn Lieutenant Commander Donnelly loose on your remaining functional systems, and we see how well your empire functions without the ability to navigate, communicate, or maintain life support. Donnelly wiggled his fingers in a little wave. I've got some really creative ideas involving your atmospheric processors and what humans call disco music. Trust me, you don't want that. Krell's shoulders slumped in defeat. We will comply with your terms, Admiral. Wise decision? Blackwood nodded. But there's one more thing. Dr. Rodriguez, I believe you had a suggestion. Rodriguez leaned forward, his expression suddenly professional. You're wounded. We noticed during our forced collaboration that your medical technology is surprisingly primitive for a spacefaring species. As part of our agreement, Earth is prepared to offer legitimate medical exchange programs, actual ones, not the fake one you used as a pretext to attack us. Vex looked up in surprise. You would still share your healing knowledge with us? After what we did? That's what healers do, Rodriguez shrugged, even for patients who are terrible at first impressions. Before anyone could respond, the conference room door slid open, and a harried-looking communications officer rushed in. Admiral, we're picking up distress signals from multiple sectors, some kind of coordinated attack against both Earth and Zargonian colonies. Blackwood was on her feet instantly. Source? Unknown species. Ma'am. The transmissions described them as crystalline entities. They're bypassing all conventional defenses. Krell had gone very still. The Vex'kar, he whispered. They've returned. You know these hostiles? Blackwood demanded. Krell nodded gravely. Ancient enemies of many species. They consume all organic matter to fuel their reproduction. We thought they had been driven to extinction centuries ago. For a moment the room was silent as both delegations absorbed the implications. Then Blackwood turned to Krell, her expression businesslike. It seems we have a more pressing concern than our diplomatic differences, Emperor Krell. What can you tell us about these Vex'kar and their weaknesses? I still can't believe we ended up in an alliance with the same Purple Guild idiots who tried to steal our hospital ship, Captain Reeves muttered. Watching from the observation deck as Earth and Zargonian vessels moved in coordinated formation against the crystalline Vex'kar ships. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," Dr. Rodriguez quoted, joining him at the viewport. "Or at least a temporarily useful ally who you still don't turn your back on." 6 weeks had passed since the confrontation in the Inevitables conference room. The Florence Nightingale had been repaired and upgraded with additional defensive systems, a concession Blackwood had insisted on after the Zargonian incident. Now, instead of treating routine colonial ailments, the hospital ship was serving as a combined Earth-Zargonian medical center, coordinating care for casualties from both sides of the conflict with the Vex'kar. "Admiral on deck," announced a young ensign, causing both men to straighten reflexively. Admiral Blackwood strode onto the observation deck, accompanied by Commander Vrex. The Zargonian officer still moved stiffly, clearly uncomfortable in Earth surroundings, but the open hostility of their first meetings had been replaced by something approaching professional respect. "Gentlemen," Blackwood nodded to Reeves and Rodriguez, "I thought you'd like to know that the combined fleet has successfully driven the Vex'kar from the Proxima Centauri system. The colonial settlements are secure." "That's excellent news, Admiral," Reeves said sincerely. "Casualties?" Lighter than expected," Vrex answered, his translator conveying a tone of grudging admiration. "Your tactical officer's strategy of using modified medical scanners to identify structural weaknesses in the Vex'kar crystalline matrices proved most effective." "Joker always did have a talent for repurposing things in ways their designers never intended," Blackwood said with a hint of pride. "Speaking of which, Dr. Rodriguez, I understand you've made some progress with the Zargonian medical exchange." Rodriguez nodded, unable to completely suppress his enthusiasm despite his lingering resentment. "Their physiological adaptation capabilities are remarkable. We've managed to integrate some of their rapid healing techniques with our regeneration technology. Recovery times are down by 30%. And our warriors now survive injuries that would have been fatal before," Vrex added. "It is not our way to admit error, but in this case, taking your medical ship by force would have been far less beneficial than this exchange of knowledge." "There's a lesson in there somewhere," Reeves said dryly. 3 months later, the UNSS Florence Nightingale docked at Earth's orbital station for a long-overdue crew rotation. As Captain Reeves prepared to disembark for his first shore leave in over a year, he found Admiral Blackwood waiting in the airlock. "Captain," she greeted him with a nod, "walk with me." They strolled through the station's main concourse, where a large viewport offered a spectacular view of Earth below and the combined fleet in orbit above. Zargonian vessels, once considered hostile, now patrolled alongside Earth ships. "The Interstellar Council has ratified the Treaty of Proxima," Blackwood informed him. "All medical vessels are now officially protected by both Earth and Zargonian forces. Any attack on a hospital ship is considered an act of war against both our peoples." "From enemies to allies in less than 6 months," Reeves marveled. "Politics makes for strange bedfellows." "Indeed," Blackwood agreed, "though I wouldn't go so far as to call us friends. Let's say, respectful adversaries who occasionally find common ground." They paused at the viewport, watching as a newly commissioned hospital ship, jointly crewed by Earth and Zargonian medical personnel, departed the station. "You know," Reeves said thoughtfully, "in all my years in service I never expected that getting attacked would lead to improved interspecies relations and medical breakthroughs." "Just another day in space," Blackwood replied with a rare smile, "where humanity's response to someone attacking our healers is to demonstrate our capacity for both overwhelming force and magnanimous cooperation. Remind me never to get on your bad side, Admiral." "Wise policy, Captain." "Very wise indeed." In a bar on the far side of the station, Dr. Rodriguez was sharing drinks with several colleagues, including surprisingly Commander Vrex, who was cautiously sampling his first Earth beer. To unlikely alliances, Rodriguez proposed, raising his glass. "And to the universal truth," added Vrex, his translator conveying what might almost have been humor, "that one should never, ever attack a human hospital ship." The gathered medical personnel, human and Zargonian alike, drank to that.